Erev Tov, everyone. Erev Tov. It is Monday night. It is 8 p.m. here on the east side of the United States, here in the diaspora. This is the Maimon Beit Knesset, therefore it must be Zeyde Story Corner. That's right, Zeyde Story Corner. And so you have some special stories you're going to tell tonight? Yes, for Lag BaOmer. Yeah, okay. So Lag BaOmer coming up this week, and so we're going to have some stories about Lag BaOmer, and hope you enjoy it. Just a reminder that next week, vacation. Not quite. Next week we will be on, but after next week we will be on summer break. And fishing, yeah, going to fishing and baseball games, yeah, go see some baseball games and stuff like that. And we will be taking off the summer, but we will be back right after the high holy days. So in the meantime, there are plenty of videos on there that you can go back and you can watch, and so you won't miss anything. So we probably should get you on so you can get your stories in. Yeah, it's a good idea. Okay. So let me put you onto your camera. There I am. Okay. I need to I'm a little off center here. Okay. Yeah, that's much better. Much better. Okay. So, we are going to let's first check and see who we have in the chat room. We have Richard is with us. Richard is the one who does our lead-in music, and along with some other ones. And Regina, and Veronica, and Simon, and Donald, as usual. Donald's always there, and so is Marshall. Marshall is always there, and Richard and Marin, and those watching in the background. Okay, so let us begin with our first story for the Lag BaOmer. This one is called The Carob Tree and the Spring. And we begin. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yosef, and Rabbi Shimon were sitting in Judah and Judah, the son of a proselyte, was sitting near them. Rabbi Judah comments to discuss by observing how fine are the works of these people. He's talking about the Romans. They have made streets, they have built bridges, they have erected baths. Rabbi Yosef was silent. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai responded, all that they made for their own benefit. They build marketplaces to set harlots in them, baths to rejuvenate themselves, bridges to levy tolls for them. Judah, the son of a proselyte, went and related their talk, which reached the government. They decreed, Judah, who exalted us, shall be exalted. Yosef, who was silent, shall be exiled. And Shimon Bar Yochai, who censored, shall be executed. Rabbi Shimon and his son went into hiding. First, they studied in the study hall, and his wife brought him bread and a mug of water, and they dined. When the decree became more severe, they went and hid in a cave. A miracle occurred, and the carob tree and a wellspring of water were created for them. They would remove their garments and sit up to their necks in sand. The whole day they studied. When it was time for prayers, they robed, covered themselves, prayed, and then put off their garments again so that they should not wear out. Thus, they dwelt in the cave for 12 years. A week in the house is more than enough for me. Yeah, I know. So, anyway, then Elijah the prophet came and stood at the entrance of the cave and exclaimed, "Who will inform the son of Yochai that the emperor is dead and his decree annulled?" So they emerged. Seeing a man plowing and sowing, they exclaimed, "They forsake eternal life and engage in temporal life. Wherever they cast their eyes, would immediately incinerate." A heavenly echo came forth and announced, "Have you emerged to destroy my world? Return to your cave." So they returned and lived there another 12 months, saying, "The punishment for the wicked in Gehenna is limited to 12 months. A heavenly echo then came forth and said, "Go forth from your cave." Now, wherever Rabbi Elazar harmed with his look, Rabbi Shimon healed. Said the Rabbi Shimon to his son, "My son, you and I are sufficient for the world." On the eve of Shabbat, before sunset, they saw an old man holding 2 bundles of myrtle and running at twilight. "What are these for?" they asked him. "They are in honor of the Shabbat," he replied. "But one should suffice you," they asked. "One is for remember the Sabbath day, and one is for keep the Sabbath day." Said the Rabbi Shimon to his son, "See how precious are the mitzvot to the people of Israel." Thereupon their minds were put at ease. Okay, so that was the first one. Okay. The second one that we are going to tell tonight is called Lag BaOmer Hospitality. This is a pretty good one. I think you like it. About 2.5 centuries ago, that was a long time ago, there lived in Kosovo a wealthy textile merchant named Reb Moshe. He lived in the best section of the city, in a luxurious mansion on a huge estate, on which grassy lawns, lush gardens, and orchards of fruit trees all flourished. Basically a simple person, his innate humility seemed to remain unaffected even as his wealth grew from year to year. But then, one day, an unusual idea entered his mind and took hold of his heart. Moshe had become possessed by the desire to experience the revelation of Eliyahu HaNevi, Elijah the prophet. Not that he was under the illusion that because of his wealth he was entitled at present to see Elijah. He knew better than that. So, to become worthy of attaining his objective, he undertook a series of fasts and other forms of deprivation and self-afflictions, hoping that these would enable him to fulfill his wish. But to no avail. He started to keep company with the Chassidim and the other strictly religious people in the community, emulating their ways. He hoped that their superior spiritual attachments would rub off on him, and his resultant elevation would allow him to attain his goal. That also didn't work. Unsure of what to try next, he decided to consult the local Tzaddik, Rabbi Baruch of Kosov. The Rebbe listened intently, but to Moshe's dismay, he said, "Reb Moshe, why are you trying to pursue such lofty matters? Your task is to perform acts of kindness and charity. That's what your soul requires for its rectification." Moshe left the Rebbe's room frustrated. He still felt sure that he knew what he really needed. From that day on, Moshe, the merchant's behavior changed radically. He abandoned his business for hours at a time in order to be in the Beit HaMidrash. He no longer paid much attention to his personal appearance or the upkeep of his estate, abandoning almost completely the aristocratic lifestyle he had adopted over the years. After some time, he went to visit the Tzaddik again. Eyes downcast, the dark shadow of depression on his face, it was clear he was deeply troubled. He desired to see the prophet, left him no peace. As he told the Rebbe of his frustrations, he involuntarily emitted a deep sigh. The Rebbe repeated his advice that the proper path for Moshe was that of acts of kindness and good deeds. This time, however, he seemed to accept Moshe's sincerity and advised him to greatly increase his distribution of tzedakah. Then, after a pause, the Rebbe added, mysteriously, "If a poor man should approach you and request even 1,000 gold pieces, don't refrain from granting his request." Once again, Moshe felt belittled by the Rebbe's reply. Nevertheless, he decided to adhere closely to his counsel. Any poor person that crossed Moshe's path was immediately endowed with a generous contribution, without any delay to check the recipient's worthiness. For several years, Moshe conducted himself in this manner, but still, there was no revelation from Elijah. His frustration gave him no rest. One day, while he was busy at work with a number of different customers. A messenger arrived from his house telling him that a pathetic-looking, poverty-stricken man had knocked on the door of the house begging for help. The pauper, however, had refused to accept the food that the servants brought. Instead, the pauper had insisted that he be invited into the dining hall so he could sit and eat there. Reb Moshe's wife wasn't sure how to handle the situation, so she had sent to ask her husband's advice. At first, Moshe was outraged by the needy man's chutzpah. But then he remembered the Rebbe's counsel. He instructed the messengers simply to tell his wife that he would come home as soon as he could, and that in the meantime she should fulfill the stranger's unusual request and invite him in. When he arrived about an hour later, he found his wife pacing near the entrance, exasperated, impatiently awaiting him. As soon as she saw him, she burst out bitterly. "Not even sitting in our dining hall satisfies this beggar. He demands to take a nap in our bedroom." Moshe dashed upstairs to the master bedroom. He could hardly believe the sight that greeted him. A disheveled, crude-looking person, wearing what seemed to be more rags and patches than actual clothing, sprawled across his bed, with the stains and remains of his meal spread all over himself. On the hitherto fresh linens, no less. As Moshe stood there with bulging eyes and mouth open wide, the guest looked at him and drawled, "No? So, how about a little donation?" A modest, insignificant sum, only a measly 1,000 pieces of gold. Moshe wasn't sure whether to erupt in anger or burst into laughter. He was so taken aback, he felt powerless to move or speak. He could only stand there in stunned silence. "If you won't give me right now 1,000 cash, I won't leave," announced the strange beggar defiantly. Moshe calmed down a bit from his initial shock. Deciding to ignore the insult to his honor, he simply offered the man a lesser sum, 50, 100, 150. Eventually, he offered him 200 gulden, hardly a small sum. It was as if the man on his bed had sealed ears. He kept arrogantly asserting he would take 1,000 gulden and not a penny less. Moshe finally lost all patience with this rude boor and signaled his servants to remove the impudent pest from his presence. But the target was much too quick. Before they could lay a hand on him, he climbed out the window and disappeared. All this occurred just a few hours before Lag BaOmer. That night, all the Hasidim gathered at the Zaddik's table in honor of the occasion. Moshe was among them. Rabbi Baruch spoke about the divine revelations that are manifest on this special day, but that not everyone merits to recognize them. Moshe decided this must certainly be an auspicious moment to mention his burning request. The Rebbe's response shocked him like an icy hand squeezing his heart. But didn't you already meet a poor person who requests from you 1,000 gold pieces? Moshe quickly told the Zaddik about the impudent beggar who had been so crudely pushed his way into his house earlier in the day. Ah, what a pity, the Rebbe said softly. You saw Elijah the prophet and you didn't recognize him. That vagrant was Elijah the prophet? Moshe screamed in dismay. Yes, explained the Rebbe. He appears to people according to the root of their souls and the level of their deeds. Moshe was truly heartbroken. He and his wife decided to move to the Holy Land. They settled in the holy city of Safed, where a change came over him almost immediately. He no longer sought greatness or extraordinary revelations. He served God simply and wholeheartedly. Before Lag BaOmer, he would go to Meron and devote himself to serving the myriads of attendees who crowded into the tomb area around the clock. He rubbed shoulders with the masses of simple Jews who came to honor Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, taking pleasure from their company and helping take care of their needs. Several years later, in Meron, on Lag BaOmer, Moshe was hurrying to and fro to help serve the many guests. He suddenly saw in front of him a face that was burned into his memory. It was the beggar who had appeared at his house so many years ago. Moshe froze in his tracks. He stared in amazement at the person in his path. This time, the eyes that looked back at him were no longer outraged and challenging. They were bright and shiny in the midst of a smiling face. So there, Moshe finally got it. He finally figured it out. Okay. So, we go on to our next story. I think maybe we take our break. This is a kind of a little longer story. So we are going to take our break now. And when we return, we will continue with our stories. This next one is called The Baal Shem Tov's Lag BaOmer Parade. So please, everyone stay tuned. We be back in 6.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy, the chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
It's intermission time, folks, so hurry, hurry, hurry. Step right over to our refreshment center for the most extravagant array of refreshment goodies ever assembled under one roof. Enjoy breathtaking, mouth-watering goodies, everything from a snack to a delicious full meal. At our refreshment center, you'll find a large variety of goodies to satisfy your hunger, your thirst, or your sweet tooth. So hurry, hurry, hurry. Visit our refreshment center now. The show starts in 5 minutes. The show starts in 4 minutes. The show starts in 3 minutes. The show starts in 2 minutes. The show starts in 1 minute. And now, on with the show.
And we are back. Okay, so let us go on to our next story, which is called, again, the Baal Shem Tov's Lag BaOmer Parade. 2 weeks before Rosh Hashanah in 1734, on his 36th birthday, Rabbi Yisrael, the Baal Shem Tov, was revealed as an extraordinarily holy person and a leader of the fledgling Chassidic movement. Before that, he devoted himself to keeping his special qualities well hidden from the public eye. He dressed and spoke and carried himself like every other simple, uneducated Jew in the Ukraine. He supported himself. He worked as a plain laborer. Actually, he was a lime digger and a charcoal burner and a tavern keeper. He had a lot of things. Anyway, his intense prayers, his meditation, and his deep Torah study were all carried out in secret. In conversation with other Jews, he would often encourage them with teachings and stories from the Midrash, the Talmud, that stressed the value of serving God simply but wholeheartedly. He strove to nourish them with a love of God and Torah, and for the entire Jewish people. But when he did so, it was always in the language and the idiom of the common people. No one suspected him of being more than he appeared. Only his wife knew his capabilities. Sometimes it happens that he would be forced to use his extraordinary powers to save Jews or even whole communities in distress. Whenever he did so, as soon as the time of need ended, he would immediately move to a new and distant location where nobody knew him. One of these occasions took place on Lag BaOmer. In those days, Jewish communities in Eastern Europe were often subject to attacks by wild bands of violent Cossacks. Tui! Anyway, and other such coarse anti-Semites. They would beat Jewish men, sometimes even fatally, rape the women, and plunder or destroy whatever Jewish property they could get their hands on. Once the town where the Baal Shem Tov was living received the word that such a gang of evil marauders was heading their way. The entire Jewish community decided to abandon their homes and hide in the hills for a few days until the invading Cossacks would calm down and leave. The Baal Shem Tov accompanied them. The people took refuge in the numerous caves that dotted the rugged terrain. From their lookout places, they could see that the Cossacks' horde had arrived. Unable to find any Jews to physically assault, they vented their anger and frustration on Jewish property. They broke into the warehouse of wine, drank themselves into a state of crazed drunkenness, smashed the rest of the barrels, and set fire to buildings. The Jews all trembled in fear that the cruel Cossacks would decide to search the hills and their hiding places would be discovered. A few days went by. The invaders stacked up piles of booty looted from Jewish homes and stores. The Jews were still terrified of being discovered. How startled they were to see that the nondescript Yisraelek, a nickname for Israel, the Baal Shem Tov's name, was assembling groups of their children outside of the caves in broad daylight. Can you imagine such a thing? They protested, whereupon the Baal Shem Tov explained to them that it was the holy day of Lag BaOmer, a day to be outside in the fields, joyously celebrating the day of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. He assured them that not only would they not be endangered, but that the merit of their Lag BaOmer observance would help to protect and rescue the entire community. Somehow, his enthusiasm and conviction affected the nervous peasants, and they gave their permission. The Baal Shem Tov went from cave to cave and gathered nearly all the children. While many of the adults were still mulling over this startling turn of events, the Baal Shem Tov launched a mini parade. The children marched along, singing happily as they followed their new charismatic leader. At first, they were a bit afraid and sang only in whispers and low voices. But in just a short time, their fear melted away as they raised their voices to join in the infectious, cheerful tunes of the day honoring Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. The parents gazed after their children with nervous affection, but their attention soon whipped to the Baal Shem Tov. It was as if he was a person they had never seen before. His face flamed with a rapture as he sang, and all his movements reflected ecstasy in the divine as he danced with the circle of children. The simple Yisraelik they had known had been transformed in their eyes into the holiest of men. His voice combined with those of pure innocent children to produce singing that seemed to be no less awesome than that of the angels in heaven. The parade and the singing continued for a long time. Afterwards, the Baal Shem Tov led the children to a small plateau, sat them on the grass, and distributed to each of them desserts that he had brought with him. He made sure that each child pronounced loudly the correct blessing for the food that he received. Then, after they had eaten, he told them riveting stories from the Talmud and the Midrash about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and about Rabbi Akiva. The children listened attentively and felt the powerful love of that the Baal Shem Tov had for each of them, responding with great affection. The parents and the other adults from the village remained very worried. How could Yisraelek stay so long in the open with their children? Their frightened glances switched rapidly back and forth from the smoke and the fury in the village below to the rows of children seated in front of the Baal Shem Tov. They whispered prayers that all should end well and that everyone would be safe. Suddenly, they saw the Cossack gang rush from the village and scatter in every direction, running with all their might. They left so suddenly that they didn't stop to take anything with them, abandoning their massive plunder. At first, the Jews were afraid that the crazed invaders were searching for them again, but the speed with which the enemy disappeared from the vicinity soon calmed their fears. Soon after, all the Jews returned to their village. The danger was over. Eventually, they were able to clarify what had happened. Somehow, the hooligans had found out, or they thought they had found out, that a troop of government soldiers was rapidly approaching in their direction. Frightened, they had fled for their lives, abandoning everything that might slow down their flight. The Jews returned to their homes with happy strides, amazed by the miracle that had taken place for them. They knew without a doubt that the miracle occurred in the merit of their children's joyous celebration in honor of the great sage Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai on his day of joy, Lag BaOmer. With the heretofore hidden mystic, the Baal Shem Tov, who had already disappeared to another location. And there you have it. Okay. I think we have time for one more. Do we have time for one more? Yes, I think we have time for one more. You know, you left during the during the break. Yes, I did leave. I had to check on something. What's the score? 2-1. Detroit, top of the seventh. Yeah, I knew you were going out there to see the bowl game. Okay, so anyway, this one is called "What the Rebbe Said." Lag BaOmer. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai told his students to make Lag BaOmer, the anniversary of his death, a day of celebration. All over the world, children march in Lag BaOmer parades. We show everyone how proud and happy we are to be Jewish and to keep the Torah and its mitzvot. But why do we celebrate Rabbi Shimon's yahrzeit? We don't celebrate the yahrzeits of many other great sages who lived in his time. The Talmud tells us that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was different. Think about the adults whom you know. What do they do? How do they spend their day? Our sages tell us that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's occupation was Torah study. That's what he did all day. He spent all of his time studying Torah. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai should serve as an example for us. But how? We do many things during the day besides studying the Torah. Yes, we do. But Rabbi Shimon's example teaches us how involved we should be at the time we do study. We should concentrate totally on what we are studying as if this is our only occupation. We shouldn't be thinking about anything else. We can learn the same lesson from another teaching of our sages. Our sages tell us that the Torah was given only to the people who ate manna. Does that mean that others do not have a share in the Torah? No. The Jews who traveled in the desert could study the Torah with no worry or bother. Their food fell from the sky, their clothes grew with them, and the clouds of glory took care of their washing and ironing. Since their needs were taken care of, they could put all their energy into learning Torah. Our sages tell us to try to concentrate on our studies in the same way the Jews in the desert did. This is what Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai did. In the time we study, we can follow this example and study the Torah with all our energy. And there you have it. We're going to end a little early tonight. There is not time to go into another big story, but we will be back next week. Remember, next week is the last week, and we have something special planned. You don't want to miss it, I guarantee you. So, tomorrow night, God willing, with the rabbis discuss with Rabbi Ariella and Rabbi Anshel, and then the Torah study in depth on Wednesday night, both at 8 p.m. Eastern. Friday night at 8 p.m. Eastern is Kabbalat and Ma'ariv Shabbat service, and Shabbat at 10 a.m. Eastern is Shachrit and Musaf. And then right back here on Monday for our last show of the Jewish year, because we won't be back until after Rosh Hashanah. And we can argue that whole thing with Rabbi Anshel about what year is what year and so on and so forth. But as far as we are concerned, we are going to call it a year. Okay, so anyway, thank you for being here tonight. I hope you enjoyed the stories. I hope you have a wonderful Lag BaOmer. And until the next time, my dear friends, we shall say, Laila Tov.